When you hear business, you hear it's Rotus time.
Money time.
Money time.
Money time.
Money
Good morning,
time.
Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers out there. Begin with inflation.
Young billionaire.
We're trying. We hope to get there. In dollar terms. We get to the United States, the Federal Reserve's preferred method of measuring inflation, PCE, consumption expenditure, price consumption expenditure index, which is of course measuring inflation by spending. 0.2% month on month, year on year, 3%. It came in line with forecasts, was below where it was in September. We're going to be hearing from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell later today because now the markets are pricing in perhaps a hold at the next Federal Reserve meeting. And then some people like Bill Ackman are going as far, this is the billionaire hedge fund manager, as far as saying that we could see cuts in the first quarter of 2024, which would make the interest rate environment, especially for emerging markets that are looking to raise Euro bonds and so on, come down. So we'll see what happens. So everybody's going to be listening to Jerome Powell, U.S. Federal Reserve Chair, later today. The inflation story continues with Europe. Europe also, we're seeing decelerations for inflation in Europe. The Eurozone, 2.4%. There we go. For November, that's a consumer price index. The forecast was for 2.8. October CPI was 2.9. And the key thing here is that what is the Eurozone's inflation target? The target is 2%. So we're seeing inflation slowly cool down to the ECB's preferred target. So at this rate, they might get back to their target, who knows, maybe the first quarter of next year, but then they've still been sounding hawkish, saying they want to maintain interest rates where they are. We look at Germany, which the largest economy in the Eurozone. They've been calling Germany the sick person of Europe because Germany is projected to perhaps contract as far as its economy is concerned. Higher energy prices, a number of issues that Germany has been facing, but inflation in Germany also decelerated, as well as in France as well. So there we go. So 3.2% for Germany. Forecast was for 3.5. October was 3.8. This is headline. So that's cooling as well. Energy prices coming down, food prices coming down. Also in France, a similar story. So across the board for the wider Eurozone, your Germany's, look at France, 3.8%. The forecast was 4.1. Headline inflation for October was 4.5. So the narrative here is that it was starting to, and of course, some will argue base effect when you compare year on year to where things were last year, but still it is decelerating, it is coming down. Same thing for the people of France. Energy prices, food coming down, and that's what we're seeing there. Okay, so that's the inflation story. So deceleration, lots to look at as we go into the new year. In fact, this is the first day of the last month of this year. So now we go to India. The India story continuing to roll on. India's GDP. Now here's the thing, India's fiscal year starts in April. So this is the July through September quarter. So I put Q3, but really for them, I guess it's Q2, the second quarter of their own fiscal year. So anyway, 7.6% growth. I mean, India is just powering on. India's the government's capital expenditure outlay for the new year. Now, there's elections coming up also, we have to keep that in mind. But I hear it's about $120 billion. That is exceeding the budgets of the entire budgets of other countries, right? So they are really ramping up spending for expenditure as they march on through. Next year is going to be huge. US elections, UK elections, Guyana, South Africa, everywhere. Anyway, 7.6%. The Reserve Bank of India's forecast was for 6.5. Reuters polled some economists, they show 6.8. India is just, we've talked about Foxconn and their $1.5 billion investment. We've talked about Apple opening up there. We've talked about Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs. Every asset manager saying that India is where the growth is and the government is spending appropriately. You are seeing the improvements in infrastructure. They're a true powerhouse emerging market. They've passed China now as the most populous country in the world. People are saying that India is going to be the next manufacturing giant. So that's why most Nigerians, or most people go for medical tourism. So they're across the board, tech, medical sciences, agriculture. India is doing it. That's the story for 2024. All right, we come to Africa. But I mean, the average, if you look at your purchasing power of the average, what is the currency? The rupee is 83 rupees to $1. So it's a stronger currency than, than most. Well, let's quickly get to Africa, right? If we got to OPEC, Angola flexing on OPEC plus. Angola says they will not adhere to the OPEC plus quota. So OPEC, of course, you had that meeting that was delayed because of Nigeria, because of Angola. So here's what happened. OPEC said Angola should produce 1.18 million barrels, 1.11 million barrels per day, right? And Angola said, no, we're going to do 1.18. So they're going to defy the quota essentially, right? So essentially, if you look at the quotes from the, and I hope we don't have this mixed up because it's supposed to be 1.18 and Angola said they would do, it's supposed to be 1.11. I think these numbers are transposed. So they said they should do 1.11. Angola said no, that we're going to do 1.18. So this is like a 700,000 or so difference, or 70,000 barrel difference in there. So if we now look at quotes from their officials from the Angolan government, this is from Estedo, is it Pedro? No, Estavao Pedro, Angola's OPEC governor. So we will produce above the quota determined by OPEC. It's not a matter of disobeying OPEC. We presented our position and OPEC should take this into consideration. That's what the Angolans are saying. Also, another official speaking for Angola, he also said, and this is Mr. Dimantino Pedro Azevedo, he's the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources. Due to the fact that the decision was not taken unanimously, and it is against Angola's position, we reiterate our proposal for a quota of 1.18 barrels of crude for the year 2024. Okay, yeah, we did get the numbers right. Sorry, I got a little confused. So it's 1.18 that they want to do. OPEC said it should do 1.11, right? So he now continues and says, listen, we've always followed the rules. We've worked with OPEC in the past, but you're not respecting our position. So this is the reason why we're going to do what we're doing. So he continues here to say that our country has been a member of OPEC for more than 16 years. During this period, we have fully complied with all the obligations owed to the organization, as well as shared the efforts that the signatory countries of OPEC and non-OPEC, have followed. So that is the deadline. Now remember, this historical context here, Ecuador famously left OPEC because of these quota issues. So Ecuador exited. So now the question is whether or not Angola will walk out. I think finally, you mentioned this yesterday, Binance, Cristiano Ronaldo is being sued by some folk in class action lawsuits in Florida over his NFT ads, which are non-fungible tokens for Binance. Apparently, when he did his ads, they were at a particular value. They've now dropped to almost zero. So some individual, I don't know why they're blaming him rather than, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. But anyway, they are blaming Ronaldo and saying that because of the ads, he influenced them to go and buy these NFTs, these non-fungible tokens. And curiously, of course, it was when Binance entered trouble and Jempenzao stepped down, they had to pay the fine. That's when this lawsuit now popped up and they are pointing fingers at Ronaldo. Whether or not they should be pointing fingers at the company, who knows? But that's what we're saying.
Okay, you still have Nigeria OPEC quotas.
Oh yeah, okay, sorry about that. So Nigeria's OPEC quota, well, Nigeria didn't argue. I don't know how I skipped that, I apologize. Nigeria's quota is 1.5. Now, of course, Nigeria didn't push back because Nigeria hasn't gone up to 1.5. So if you look at Nigeria's production for the second quarter of this year, third quarter of this year, Nigeria did 1.2 million barrels per day. I don't think we've done 1.5 million barrels since the first quarter of 2021. And so Nigeria's like, oh yeah, so here we go. So here are the numbers. So am I correct? Let me see. When last did we do 1.5? The numbers will pop up. Okay, well, so first quarter of this, first quarter of this year. So we've dropped since that level. So first quarter of this year, 2023, it was when we did 1.5. So although, interesting enough, OPEC called McKinsey and a couple other consultants said, please, can you go and verify the numbers from Nigeria?
Oh my God.
And make sure, they did that. They called McKinsey and two other consultants. They said, go and check the numbers from Nigeria. But Nigeria is okay.
Too.
Yeah, exactly. So Nigeria is not pushing back because
they didn't do that.
Yeah, they want to verify.
No,
go and verify.
They have to verify?
Go and verify.
Really?
The famous political candidates
I mean,
for
the
presidency.
truth has to be said. That's why we need to do our homework properly. It's sad that now that when we say we churn out figures, OPEC is saying go verify what they're really doing out there.
Yeah.
But I think what we should really nip in the bud is the crude oil theft that is going on big time. Also, we've not been able to attract new investment.
That's correct.
Growth is in over 10 years. I keep talking about Egypt because Egypt does not have the kind of gas arsenal we have, but you're getting all the investment on the African continent. So what is it that we need to do to be able to get the investment? At first, a lot of people say, okay, if we floated the currency, the investment will come. We've done that now, the investments are not coming.
Be patient, be patient.
What is it that Nigeria needs to do? Because I want Nigeria to succeed.
Of course.
What is it that Nigeria needs to do to really attract the investment and be good in the eyes of investors? That's one big one we need to ask ourselves. Secondly, as regards Cristiano Ronaldo and Binance, I think for all of those that influence products out there, I think you need to be cautious.
Right.
You need to look at it big. I don't know how the class action lawsuit will also go, but it also impacts on your personality. But for India, so
powerhouse.
It's the powerhouse. Yes, it's growing, Rutus. But I've done something. I've been talking to a lot of Indians living in India recently, across various cadres, and the argument is it's not trickling down. So Rutus, see, you might be growing 6%, and it's not trickling down. You remember what we blamed the PDP for?
Yep.
In 2014, 2015.
Crony capitalism, we're
growing 6-7%, but it was aided by crony capitalism, and it was not trickling down. You remember how we used to say then in 2014, 2015, oh, growth that doesn't bring jobs. That's exactly what is also happening in India with Modi. So it's not trickling down. The likes of people that are getting all the money are the likes of the Adanis of this world and some other of his friends that he has given everything to.
Yeah.
That's what's happening in India. It is not getting to the very core bottom of the Indian people. Yeah, some people are getting social mobility, don't get me wrong. But when you see a general average across the core, so how it will trickle down is the biggest problem.
But something has to be said for the investment that is going into India.
No,
I mean, that's
very
jobs.
good. Oh.
Apple,
very good.
Foxconn,
very good.
It's jobs.
Don't get me wrong, very
jobs,
good.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm asking you, Rotus.
Yeah.
Why is it that with the population strength of Nigeria, which is supposed to be a big market, we're struggling with investments? There's something wrong somewhere. In terms of population strength, we have a big market, over 200 million.
We're the biggest in Africa.
Biggest in Africa, but we're not getting the investments.
Yeah.
That's what the investment and the finance ministry should do something about.
Okay, this morning, there is a report by S&P Global. I don't know whether you have seen that, about what will happen in South Asia. And the main thing that they are saying is that China will no longer be the major powerhouse.
Right.
That is now India.
Exactly.
And why India? Because domestic consumption has gone up. They have a huge population. And that will seem to have cancelled out the effect of inflation, and other issues. China, contrary-wise, is facing very serious crisis in its real estate sector. And on the basis of that, S&P Global is projecting that whereas China may enter 2024 with about 5.4%, but that in 2024 it will go down to about 4.6%.
Right.
That's the growth projection for China. But for India,
Yes.
they say India may enter the year with about 6.4%, but it could end up at about 7%.
Right.
So that's the argument, but it's not new. They've been saying, there's been so much talk among economics about how, in terms of population and the economy, India is likely to end up as the major economic powerhouse. And that's why Narendra Modi has been very busy selling India as if he's selling a commodity.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's also about how you brand your country.
Indeed.
We have population here, but what are we branding? We were just discussing earlier on about our selfish lawmakers.
Yes, I heard
who
that.
take a whole appropriation bill, and the only principle that is important to them is how they can be in charge of projects. I don't think they do like that in India.
Right.
Even if, yes, I agree with the point about crony capitalism. But Modi justifies it. He says, after all, these people bring results. But people say, well, you are from the same region.
Yeah.
So why? This is cronyism.
Yeah.
This is nepotism. That's that about that. Now you talked about inflation going down. Now, there's a positive side to it. Today, Financial Times, front page, has a story saying that investors are now rushing for risky assets because they believe that interest rates have reached the peak, and that what is likely to happen within the first quarter of next year will be cuts in interest rates. So there is optimism among investors rushing for all these investments. After all, the US in October had an inflation rate of 3.5%. It had come down, from 9.1%, about the same time last year. In the Eurozone, the average, I see the numbers you quoted from France and Germany, the average is 2.4%. Now, talking about CR7. Ronaldo, I think it's just about the risk of celebrity endorsement.
Right.
what the people taking out the class action are asking for is $1 billion. And they're saying that by promoting Binance, he ended up making them to lose investments because Binance is having problems. Changpeng Zhao, you know, had to even suffer for it. He had to resign as CEO. So it's not only CR7. Before now, for FTS, Formula One was condemned.
Right.
Baseball was condemned. I think even Mercedes-Benz, you know, was also accused of promoting the FTS. This is just the collateral damage resulting from the volatility of cryptocurrency and a justification for more serious, you know, regulation. Now, as for OPEC,
yes,
OPEC, well, you made the point that Nigeria cannot even complain. We don't even know how much crude we produce. There is crude oil theft and all of that. But, you know, before this meeting, which was postponed and then held virtually yesterday, Angola and Nigeria were mentioned as two African countries that were opposed. But the truth of the matter is that as part of their resolutions yesterday, Saudi Arabia is going to continue with its cuts, 1 million barrels per day. The 2 million barrels per day till the end of 2024 is there. But on top of it, other countries are even volunteering to cut more. Russia wants to cut about 135,000 barrels per day. Even Algeria, 42,000. You know, so you have other countries volunteering. Oman wants to cut. Kuwait is cutting about 100,000 and all of that. Okay, so the bigger news is that Brazil is going to join OPEC.
Thank you. Yes, that's right.
OPEC Plus has been inviting, you know, other countries to join. Now, President Lula, you know, according to the energy minister of Brazil, has given approval, but they still have to sign the document of cooperation, which is mandatory for every member. But it is not clear whether Brazil is going to cut production quota. But there is very clear indication that Brazil is also going to join OPEC Plus.
All right, thank you so much.